So welcome everyone who's just joining. We're going to wait a little longer for everyone to sign in whilst we make introductions and everything gets started. Throughout the discussion, there is going to be polls, which we would love for everyone to get involved in. So the first poll, I believe, is going to be up in on the chat section on the right, and Aisha will be putting on everything as well as hosting all of our questions and webinar throughout the whole entire webinar. So you should be able to see that there. The first poll that we're going to get into, which we would love for you to interact with, would be poll up there, which is 1 out of 5, which is 22% of the cyber industry say they have experienced discrimination in the last year. That's up from 1 in 6 in 2020, 16%. Why do you think? What do you think is actually causing the number of increase over 2021? So we'd love to hear everyone. And then we can also get the comments from all of our panelists kind of moving forward and what you think, because I know this is something that we've spoken before about, and we all have quite a bit of comments on that, so that'd be really good. Before we kind of get into everything moving forward, there is a tiny bit of housekeeping that I need to get sorted, of course. So what we can expect, set the agenda. We're going to have 1 hour of the actual panel discussion. That's going to have live Q&A throughout. So you ask the questions. If you do also have any questions, write them down. There is a half-an-hour networking event which will happen after this. Aisha will post that link onto the chat next to us. So it's not going to be this link specifically. Please click onto that if you want to speak to any of our panelists. Also, if you want to do a little bit of networking, we'll have all of their LinkedIn below. I'm sure they're more than happy for everyone to contact them. So it'd be really good to kind of get that going after this. Please also note that this is being recorded. It's going to be uploaded to our Broadgate Social YouTube channel, where you can also access previous webinars, which are amazing, also about diversity and also hot topics. We are going to be formulating a podcast with the audio, which is fantastic if you haven't done your hair like me. That's going to be on our Broadgate Social Spotify. And there are subtitles, by the way. For anyone who needs subtitles, please check the chat function on how to access them. So really important if you do need that, that is available there. But let's get started. I think I'll start with introducing myself. So good morning, good afternoon, depending where you are in the world. Thank you for joining and welcome to everyone. I'm your host and chair for this Broadgate webinar, the co-founder of Diversity Within Cyber, and my name is Ashley Jean Phipps, but mostly everyone, especially the panelists, know me as AJ. I work specifically Broadgate Search, and I actually build out world-class security functions across the US. Inclusion and diversity is at the forefront of my mission always. If you've ever spoken to me, I make that very, very evident from the beginning. And I'm also an advocate for equality and amplifying voices on minorities. I'm a woman who's a part of the LGBTQIA community and also a partner to exmilitarycareers.com. So we're really, really proud to be a part of a company who doesn't just work for advocacy, but also works to take action. You can kind of see this in our statistics at Broadgate Search. Across the US last year, 55% of our placements were females, and 53% of our placements who were leadership were also females. And I think that really highlights the importance of, not only having diversity within hiring, but having diversity within leadership, making that jump up to management, which is really important, and I'm sure we'll be discussing then. Now, just before we get started, I would love for everyone to introduce themselves, just so everyone who knows who they're speaking to. And then what we can also do is have your take on the first poll that's kind of come up. I can speak through exactly what everyone thinks is the most important factors and why people are seeing discrimination increase over 2021. So let's quickly go through these and then we'll start the introductions off. So why is there discrimination increase from 2020 to 2021? We've got 23% of people who think that remote working is the reason for increase in discrimination. We've got 15% of people who think it's the Great Resignation, which is an interesting factor to kind of touch on. And there's also 15% of people who focus on shifting from diversity hires because of COVID, so not having that actual importance of it because of everything that was happening with COVID. And the last one is 46% understanding more when you're actually being discriminated against. So really interesting. I didn't expect that. Really interesting. I think what we'll do is we'll start with how my webinar screen goes. So if we can start with you, Rose, if you'd like to say your name, your current position, and also what you think is the most important factor of why discrimination is increasing over the past year.
Yeah, absolutely. So thank you everybody for coming to this webinar. My name is Rose. I am the Senior Manager of IT Compliance at an organization called Spring Health. We specialize in mental health, like taking care of yourself and all of those things that are super critical to fostering a really strong workforce. Now, when we talk about this poll question, I think that everybody understanding more about, when you're being discriminated against, I'll agree with that. I think that a lot of people are really taking their mental health more seriously. There's a lot more resources available. There's a lot more avenues, and people understand that there's availability for other positions that they could go pursue and not stay at an organization that does not treat you in the way that you deserve to be treated. And I think this is really highlighted by this poll question. So I think it's really great that people are starting to understand that and take action against it and understand that they're worth being treated better than what their current organization may be treating them as.
100%. And that's it, that people have the choice now, which is a major reason for leaving, and touches on the Great Resignation as well. So thank you so much. And over to you, Rebecca, because you're next on the list on my screen. Tell me a little bit about yourself, and also in the poll, what do you think is raising that discrimination?
Yeah, thanks, AJ. So I'm Rebecca Blair. I'm the SOC manager at a restaurant tech company called Toast, and I'm part of the LGBTQIA, obviously a diversity group. But I think for me, I kind of have to agree with Rose. I think mental health has been such a critical part of COVID over the last couple of years, where people have realized or either had new struggles from being inside and being isolated. And because of that, I think people are taking it more seriously and looking at it. But unfortunately, also kind of remote working kind of plays a part, where when you're not face to face with someone, it's a lot easier to say something or to make a move without actually having that human factor there. So it's a little bit of both for me.
Yeah, 100%. And definitely that factor of not having the humanization, literally dehumanization of being behind a screen, is such a huge factor. It's a lot harder to be a troll, for lack of a better word, behind a keyboard than it is face to face with someone, where you can see what your words and what your actions actually affect on them. So thank you so much. And then over to you, Malia.
Hello, I am currently Manager of Governance Risk Strategy at RSM. What I do is I actually build security programs for companies. So I serve as a Chief Information Security Officer for many different companies, specifically working with startups and a lot in the private equity space. So it's been pretty fun building that program here. I'm also a Navy veteran, been doing cybersecurity for about 10 years now. And I would say the poll, I appreciate that all of your answers pretty much resonated with mine, where, yeah, we're more aware of our rights. We're more aware of our rights in the workforce. We're more aware of our rights just in society in general. And we know what a good place looks like and a bad place looks like. And because of remote work, we have more freedom to move around, and we're not restricted to our one location. So, and especially right now, powers with the labor. And if we don't like a place, guess what? Cybersecurity is in high demand. We'll just go somewhere else and probably get paid higher too. So a combination of kind of all of those things, but definitely knowing our rights and having more awareness is one of the biggest factors, in my opinion.
100%. Yeah, and that was one of the factors which at the end I really didn't think that everyone was going to put that. That's actually I'm quite glad that's the percentage that's highest, because it shows me that over 2021 there was such a huge education, and even over this year, Malia has been quite a big part of educating me in terms of cybersecurity and the diversity factors specifically within it. So I can't appreciate you enough, Malia. Thanks so much. And Odie, thanks so much for joining us. We were actually just doing the introductions prior. So in terms of just introducing yourself, we did have a poll which we had prior, which I'm sure we can skip out because we'll hear a little bit more about what you have to say on that factor there, Odie. But we'd love for you to introduce yourself, a little bit about what you do. Yeah, get us all set off. Oh, we're on mute. This is remote working at its finest.
Yes, absolutely. And thank you for the opportunity. My name is Odie Gray. I'm the president of Diversity Cyber Council. It's our mission to serve disadvantaged communities by training, educating, and staffing underrepresented groups to enter the cybersecurity workforce. So very excited to be a part of this panel and be able to join the discussion.
Thanks so much. Yes, and thanks for joining us. I know we always have technical issues on my side. It's normally me, which Rebecca is laughing about because she knows. So thanks so much. I wanted to also, once we've got to know you guys a little bit, I just wanted to go into a little bit of statistics. I know last time we spoke, highlighting the importance of these discussions was really important. So just to get us set off, according to the Decrypting Diversity Report of 2021, discrimination in cybersecurity is a reality for more than 1 in 5 people. So that's 22%. Now, gender-based incidents against women continue to be one of the largest issues. So 19% of women experience a gender-based incident, and that's up from 15% in 2020, even though we are working remotely. This compares to just 1% of cisgendered men having a gender-based incident in their workplace, just 1%. So this is a huge, huge factor that is a major, major gap and shows exactly how this discrimination against women is still a huge factor within this. They've also found that those from ethnic minority backgrounds and those who are part of the LGBTQIA community all suffered much higher levels of discrimination. Of course, unfortunately, that is normally the case, but career barriers, and by career barriers, I mean things such as low rates of title promotion, lower financial compensation, and work-life balance not being restructured are as a result of those, and falling into those diversity factors, you have those career barriers significantly more, 14% than it's risen from 14% to 25% in 2021. So those career barriers have actually risen so much during that time for anyone who falls into one of those diversity factors, which is horrific. However, it's not all doom and gloom, and it's not all going to be doom and gloom throughout the webinar. It's going to be really positive in how we can do this and what change is going to be affected from it. So there has been some progress with significant improvements in ethnicity-based incidents in the workplace. So with Black respondents who have expressed that incidents in the workplace have dropped from 41% in 2020. 41% of people said that they had an incident, and that's gone down to 23% this year, which is obviously still a huge, huge amount of incidences for one minority to have, but to drop by almost, more than 20% is a really, really great fact. And hopefully remote working has been a positive factor for that. I want to make the discussion really engaging. So if anyone has any questions, please feel free to put them. We'll definitely try and be answering them throughout, and Aisha will be putting on a few panels throughout, as I said. So let's get stuck right in. One of the major factors that we wanted to speak about was the different traditional versus non-traditional routes of getting into cybersecurity, which each of you have a fantastic story. So I'd love to go around, hear a little bit about how you got into cybersecurity. Did you fall into it? Was it traditional? And I'd love to, again, start with you, if that's all right, Rose.
Yeah, absolutely. So my non-traditional route into cybersecurity started when I grew up in Mississippi. So grew up there, and I had to get out of that state. If you aren't familiar, it's still stuck in the ways a little bit. They're getting much better, but when I turned 18, which was some time ago, it was definitely not the place that I felt like I could thrive. So I joined the military, the Navy actually, and went into IT, and spent about 8 years in the Navy. And around the time that I was starting to think about getting out, I had a chief that knew that I was getting an advanced networking bachelor's degree, and he put me into a position where I could work on routers and switches and firewalls and all those things that I wasn't getting in that traditional IT space. And I was putting dysstigs on them. So if you're familiar with dysstigs, you know how much of a pain they are to put on routers and switches and all those things. And I got a deep dive into securing these devices. And I was like, oh man, I love this. And so I got out of the military, and I stayed in security ever since. I did all sorts of more of the networking side of securing devices. And then eventually I made my way into governance, risk, and compliance. And I was like, I love that because I'm able to be a liaison between the business and the technology side that are constantly butting heads. And I'm able to communicate with both of them. And so ended up getting some, additional education to support me there. But a lot of my time through my career, I was the only woman, the only female on my team, and always faced that constant struggle of trying to get ahead, trying to get the support that I needed, because it was very much like a good old boys club of all these different paths that I went through. And now I'm just fortunate to be able to give advice to others and enable others to be successful and not get stuck in that good old boys like situation that we've routinely seen in cybersecurity.
Absolutely, and not get involved and encourage that behavior just because you've got into the position that you are is such an amazing factor about you constantly looking down. So thanks so much for that. And we really get into kind of more of the mentorship that you spoke about too, because that's something I really want to touch on your point. And then Rebecca, as we go down the list, if you want to tell me a little bit about yours as well.
Yeah, I actually followed a very traditional route of after high school going to college. To be completely honest, the only reason I did computer security instead of computer science is because I didn't want to take calculus 3 in college, but it really stuck. So I really enjoyed participating in capture the flag exercises and really getting my hands on a lot of servers. And from there went into government contracting for a while and then kind of discovered the world of startups, and I've loved it ever since.
Really gives that mentality. I love exactly the same. I love a startup mentality. You still have that really, really great culture at Toast as well, which you've been able to kind of cultivate and also grow in your groups, which is so, so great. And then onto you, Malia. We've already had your story on the podcast, but if you'd like to give a little synopsis, it's amazing.
Yeah, so I originally went to college thinking I wanted to be a lawyer, specifically working with civil rights. I wanted to be an NAACP or ACLU attorney. The recession hit. Law school is very expensive, so I didn't continue with that. But I had an affinity for languages, for foreign languages. Studied global justice, so I decided I wanted to join the Navy to be a translator. I specifically wanted to work with women and children in Afghanistan and Iraq. They had just opened combat roles for women in 2010. That didn't pan out. They were like, hey, we need you to go do this computer stuff instead, specifically this weird cybersecurity stuff. And I had grown up with computers. My dad was an electrician. I tore apart electronics all growing up, so I was naturally pretty good at it. And I ended up really enjoying that while in the Navy and, got to do it on deployment. When I got out, I was like, hey, that stuff was really cool. How do I do this in the civilian world? So, did kind of like net admin, network administrator, systems administrator, and called just a general cybersecurity expert for a couple of companies to when kind of like with Rebecca, where I got to work with a bunch of different companies. And now I'm kind of like that person that just gets airdropped into a company if something is messed up, if they don't have any security or, everything's broken. Cool. I get airdropped in, go and fix everything, set it all up, train up the team, and then move on to the next company. And I've really enjoyed that. I think the military also helped too, like stay cool, calm, and collected, especially with security incidents. I'm not really phased, can't be any worse than being on deployment. So for me, it's just like, it's just a natural career. And I like that I could still tap into my original goal was to go in and defend others, right? Defending their their data and protecting others. So I think this career path absolutely makes sense for me. You're muted.
Always the way with me, isn't it? I was actually being really, really nice to you, so I'll really say what I said. But we're really appreciative that you kind of took this route and didn't go into language, even though I'm sure you'd be absolutely fantastic in it, because honestly, the mentorship and just like everything that you've done in terms of being aware and going through such a busy week and still making time to do something like this because you know it's going to help someone, it really kind of speaks towards your character and how you feel about cybersecurity. And then last but definitely not least, the rose amongst the thorns, for lack of a better word. Odie, tell us a little bit about you. How did you get in?
Yeah, so I initially got in through my military career. I actually started off in aviation, and it wasn't a direct match. So I was able to get permission to go to another MOS, and I grew up playing computer games and video games, and I thought, cybersecurity would be a better alignment. And it wasn't a direct alignment, but I found myself in that role. And I had the fortunate experience of connecting with an instructor that taught Security Plus. And he was very just over the top and eccentric. And he really motivated me to take this on as a career path. So I still give him credit to this day and thank him. His name was Mr. Birch, and he was a veteran military guy, very old school, but very cool personality. And he really sparked that interest in me through my MOS training. And I continued after my military service. And fun fact, I've only been promoted once in my career. In my entire professional career, I've only been promoted once. And I'm going to get to why I mentioned that. But once I got out of the military, I started off in, I think, IT help desk support, and then had to go off for another different position as a system admin. And I mentioned I only got promoted once, and it wasn't a lack of effort or desire or earnest on my part, but I think that there is a glass ceiling, and there's just not enough investment to be able to promote people from diverse backgrounds. I think that historically, and the data shows that most diverse professionals, they sit in a role for 5 to 7 years before being considered for promotion, while others tend to get promoted within the first 3 years. So with that being said, sometimes you have to take ownership of your career and be proactive about pursuing the roles that you believe your experience best aligns with and best provides that economic support, financial support for your life and your family.
Absolutely. And actually, the next question I had was specifically for yourself, and you can see how passionate you are about it because you've already touched on it. And it's a question that more kind of brings people to action is, cybersecurity is growing as an industry, leaps and bounds all the time. It's a constant candidate market, for lack of a better word. So why is it that we're not seeing a rise in diverse numbers in terms of the hiring aspects?
Yeah, so honestly, the biggest barrier to enhancing diversity in cybersecurity in any workplace or workforce would be the comfortability with the status quo and the fact that there's a lack of accountability on how unconscious bias plagues the hiring process and promotion process as well. I think that as human beings, we all carry a level of unconscious bias, but it becomes a detriment and it becomes discriminatory when people in power who have the authority to affect organizational change and fail to do it and is led by unconscious bias versus objective qualifications and experience. I made it to the final round interview for 10 different positions for a company that I really wanted to work for. So that just shows my resilience and my determination to really get hired at that employer, that I sat for 10 different final interviews. And that's not including the other preliminary interviews and all. Yeah, that was pretty much, if you count all the hours, that was pretty much 40 hours that I didn't get paid for. But with that being said, I didn't get the nod at the end of the day. And is a position where many minorities are objectively qualified, yet subjectively denied. And it has a direct correlation to hiring authorities' comfortability and unconscious bias, where someone can be, again, qualified, but not hired. And I think that is what limits a lot of diversity in the workplace for a lot of employers.
100%. And that kind of training, unbiased training, is always there. It's really evident. We have it at Trinova and Broadgate as a whole. There's ways you can even do it, even in terms of just small ways of changing things on LinkedIn, not looking at photos, not having the ability to search, like see surnames when doing searches. Small things like that can really change, even if you are someone like myself, who I am conscious of that unconscious bias, a little bit of an oxymoron, but and it just allows me to really take away that little bit that still remains within. So it's really, really interesting that you touch on that kind of unconscious bias part. And I think this kind of brings me on to more, again, the call of action, which we're looking to do. And I know this is really important for you, Rebecca. But what, in terms of individuals, businesses, groups, what can they actually do to support minorities? And what is that call to action, to help them succeed in cybersecurity as a whole?
Yeah, there's a lot of different things that businesses can do. I know one of the things that Toast did is, with all of the hiring managers and anybody who would be in an interviewing role, is we all took unconscious bias tests. So that way you could actually recognize where you might have an unconscious bias, so you can start to address it. We also implemented a lot of differences in our hiring practices. For example, like my job roles don't have the education requirement. It's more about the skills that you can do. Similarly with offering, test instead of something like that. So it kind of takes some of those aspects where we're not looking at pictures immediately. That's not part of the package when I talk to somebody. But other things that we can do just for people who are already at a company is we have a lot of different diversity groups within Toast. So for LGBT, it's the multi-grain group. There's also a private group for mental health called Complex Carbs. There's obviously a bread cream through everything. And you have it for the Asian toasters or for Bao. So anybody who wants to start up a group has the ability to go and do so. They pick their own name. And then, for example, obviously during June, there's going to be guest speakers that represent the LGBT community that's open to anybody at Toast. Or obviously we did stuff for the Trans Day of Visibility recently. And so every group has that ability to push kind of education and push that inclusion across the company. And it's all supported all the way up to our C-levels who get involved, where they have Toast specific swag that goes to those diversity groups and things like that. So really making people feel included, offering that kind of mentoring network within those groups, and kind of helping everybody succeed.
Yeah, having that awareness of someone there who is in the same space as you and may have had the same discriminations prior. It's awareness is the biggest thing. So that's amazing. I absolutely love the names on that as well. Just the names alone would make me enter one of the groups. So that's fantastic. Really, really good. And then I think what we'll move on to is a little bit more things that are roadblockers in cybersecurity. So we spoke a little bit about people who are going into entry level, and we'll speak a little bit more about that at the end, which I know is a really fantastic kind of mentoring for a lot of people, and also a way that you help people to actually get into security positions, Odie. So we'll touch on that. But in terms of roadblockers, what do you believe is the biggest roadblocks to reaching leadership in cybersecurity, particularly amongst minority groups? And I wanted to hit this one with Malia, if that's all right. I wanted to see, because you've done a lot about how to actually not to get into cybersecurity, but make that next jump up where there isn't that many people of minority.
Yeah, for example, in my current firm, I'm one of 2 women in management, and we used to have 300 people total in cybersecurity. We've had a little bit of turnover, and it's dwindling. And everybody that is a woman is pretty much at the bottom, or anybody that's diverse is at the bottom. So we have this kind of like reverse pyramid where you have all your diversity at the bottom, and then you have no diversity at the top. And it can be difficult to reach leadership that if you are, let's just say your average white male in tech, you have been in a position of authority, you've been in a position of leadership, you have been welcomed, you have been part of that inclusive culture your entire life. You have no idea what it's like to, have to break into an area in which you are the outlier. And it's something where I am usually the only woman in the meeting. I'm usually the only woman in leadership. I'm usually the only woman on the team. That's at every company that I've worked at. And it can be challenging to, get that understanding. And I talk with a lot of folks. I do a lot of work with women especially, and trying to convince them to stay in the industry once they get to that mid and senior level. Because a lot of folks, once they get to this level, we look around, there's not anybody that really looks like us or has the same experience as us, and we can get really frustrated. Promotions are held up, and we feel like we're not making any progress. And I felt that too. There are times where I just get burnt out and I'm like, what are we even doing? Have we made progress? Why are women still leaving the industry? Why do we still have boards that all look the same? Why do we still have all of these things? It's 2022. Come on. What's the holdup? So I would say for everybody that's listening, be an advocate, not an ally. You have to move beyond just being an ally and saying, well, yeah, of course I appreciate women. Well, no, do something about it. Actually advocate for promoting women in the room, advocate for getting diverse folks a seat at the table, advocate to be more proactive about these things, because it's not enough to just say, yeah, I support, Black folks in the workplace, or yes, I support, AAPI individuals, et cetera. No, actually promote them, get them to do talks, step aside. If you are already a leader, step aside and allow someone else to step into that role. Let them grow as a leader. Let them be able to develop those resources and let their voices be heard. So that's kind of it. You're muted again. Every time after me.
It's because I never want to stop you. That's why I'm always just like, and I'm always scared that I'm one of those breathers. Do you know what I mean? Like on the mic, but I do want this to be quite good on the podcast this time because I was quite ill. So hence the very sexy microphone. But that, I think you hit the nail on the head. It's just about actually putting yourself out there. And a lot of the things that we speak about though, especially as women, is getting to the top and not having that emphasis on making other women go through what you've had to go through because you've had a hard time, and being that mentor, as you said, Malia, and I always speak about it, not being a door opener, being a door blocker, being that person to actually open the door and make sure that it's open for everyone who follows after. That is the major thing about being a leader, and how if you're in that leader position, if you finally get into that manager position, to help out, but also if you're already there, you're not directly affected by diversity, it's still important to make sure that you have that effect on someone else. That's really, really great. Really do. And as I mentioned, obviously in our poll earlier, 1 in 5 people, according to a study, has actually had effects at work of discrimination. I'd love to go to you, Rose, and say, like, is there anything in terms of moving up to that leadership position that you found discriminating in? Obviously not where you are now, but just in your career as general.
Yeah, there's an experience that really set me down a path of advocating for myself. I remember a few years ago, I had a director over cybersecurity, and I asked him, I want to get into a management position. Can I start shadowing you? Can I do something to kind of understand what do I need to do to break into management? And he blew me off. Not once did I ever get to shadow, not once did I ever get to do anything. And I was like, you know what? I have to do this for myself. I have to advocate for myself. I have to do the things. And it wasn't until a couple years later when I had this fabulous boss, his name is Joe Wen, he's at my previous company, who started advocating for me. He started being an advocate, not an ally, of women in his space. He owns his company, and he was able to start opening the doors for me to expand my leadership skills. And I was able to start going to organizations as a consultant and give them leadership guidance because I had the skills. I just not had an opportunity to get into a leadership position. And so now I find myself as a senior manager, and I'm able to enable others. I'm enabling the organization to have more diversity in tech. I'm able to start like really advocating for others and start influencing these things to start happening in my org. And luckily, I'm fortunate enough that Spring Health is a very diverse organization, just in general. And so like that is a very like high priority for them. But yeah, definitely advocating for myself was like the biggest thing that I can do. And now advocating for others is my top priority as far as like getting more diversity into this space.
That's such an interesting factor that you say that you had to do it for yourself. And obviously that's not the easiest thing to do. It takes a lot of chutzpah, a lot of just analyzing, self-reflection. But I also think it takes a state of understanding that you are being discriminated against, that you don't have the same platform or you don't have the same beginnings as someone who isn't in a minority. And just having that factor of being, all these small things that are happening, whether that be direct discrimination or whether that be slight discrimination, microaggressions, you name it, these things are real. And you have the voice and you have the right to stand up and say, I'm not being advocated for because I am a minority and it is something that's important. And once you have that power, I think you start to get people behind you, and you also start to have the power to help other people bring them up. So it's just so great that you started the mentoring to really do it, because as I said, a lot of women or people just in general who have faced discrimination get to the top and they don't have that ability to have the empathy and go back into the past and feel that again. So really great. And I think this is going to be quite similar to the poll that's coming up. So we'll probably get your thoughts on a little bit more and the thoughts on everyone else. But due to global discrimination in cyber throughout 2021, 16% of cyber professionals have considered changing employers or leaving the sector entirely. So that's compared to 9% in 2020. So 7% more of people throughout 2021 have looked to change as a whole or just change their actual company? I'd like to get pretty much all of yours, if we can, get your take on, have you ever actually tried to change from cyber as a whole, and what made you stay? Should we start with Rebecca? Oh, actually, Odie, because I know that you had obviously the 10 the 10 interviews that didn't work out. What made you stay, I guess?
Well, I would say it was a shift in purpose, and I don't see rejection. I view rejection as redirection, and I wanted to be able to create a path for others to not have to have a similar experience, because it's very demoralizing. It definitely, messes with your mental health to work so hard in your career, accrue these credentials, invest in yourself, and be able to accomplish so much and still not be viewed as valuable to employers. Again, objectively, you offer value. Objectively, you learn so much. At a minimum, your potential should allow an extension to an opportunity. But when you go through 10 different final interviews and don't get selected, it's like, what do I do now? And for me, my response was, instead of giving up on myself, or instead of just feeling dejected and deflated, I said, you know what, I'm going to start a nonprofit with some guys I served with in the military. And we're going to try to develop a sustainable diverse talent pipeline to be able to refine the skills of people from underserved communities and be able to equip them with cybersecurity knowledge and be able to fortify their path to employment. One of the unfortunate things is that, many diverse candidates, they do get relegated to the entry-level positions. And that's something that, has to be resolved for in some way. And I would say, as a call to action, first and foremost, lead with your humanity. If you're leading with your gender or your race, or your sexual orientation, those things can cloud judgment. Lead with your humanity. Understand that person that you're interviewing, they're a person as well. So find empathy and practice active listening and go the extra mile to connect with that person, because you don't know what they've been through, especially, I would say, myself, coming from, a disadvantaged community, not having the best high school, not having the best, support channels and groups. And look where I am despite that, so measure me by the journey traveled versus your predisposition of who you think I am. Because I've overcome so much, and to be rejected at that point of overcoming so much, it has the potential for some to give up. For me, it didn't. But hopefully I'm answering your question and rambling on.
No, you definitely are. And I think that the number one thing that I'm kind of looking to get is, once you get to that stage, which you've obviously been through, and obviously you're a really strong character, and you're like self-analyzation is incredibly like inept and quite advanced. And I think for everyone else who's just in cybersecurity, been in cybersecurity for a period of time, just keeps getting this rejection and doesn't really feel like they have that self-reflection. I'd like to open this up to obviously the rest of the panel. How do what makes you stay in cybersecurity, and why do you think that once you get to a certain position, it's worth that wait? For people who are really looking to kind of actually move out now, because those numbers are obviously really going up. Rose?
Yeah, I'll jump in. So I stay in security kind of like for a couple different reasons. The first and foremost, working in governance, risk, and compliance. One, I love what I do. I love the very nerdy aspect of it all day long. But I also want to be in a position that I'm protecting data, protecting like the things that I'm in charge of. And so like working at a healthcare organization, that PHI data is just so critical. And I want to be in a position that I'm able to protect that data, because that's why I got into cybersecurity. And so I stay in this field because of that. And now being in a position of leadership, I'm able to take the things that I've learned through this very long journey and give that skill, or give other people that opportunity to learn those skills, because it's really challenging to learn things in cybersecurity unless you had that opportunity. And so I stay in it for, you know, personal reasons of like really liking doing this nerdy aspect of GRC, but I also do it because I like being able to get others to a place that they want to get to.
And it seems quite similar with a lot of the panel too, where everyone has this real sense of protection, which I was actually looking towards you, Malia, coming up, because I know this gets your mama bear on. So I'd love to hear from you.
Yeah, so like I said earlier, I joined cybersecurity because, you know, I love defending and protecting others. And we talk about discrimination, and great timing because I'm actually facing retaliation and discrimination at work right now. I am a huge advocate of pay equity, pay transparency, and making sure that everyone is paid fairly and equitably. I actually discovered at my current job that 6 women were being well underpaid their male counterparts, all with the same, you know, experience and time in their job, and et cetera, et cetera. So I advocated, I mentored and educated each woman, taught her how to advocate for herself. And I used my position as a manager and as a leader in the firm in order to advocate for them in the rooms in which they were not welcome, where I have a seat at the table. I get to attend leadership meetings they're not in. So I was able to advocate for them. The final straw, apparently, for the firm was when I discovered that my colleague, who is a woman on my team, she joined my team just recently. She has the same exact title as me, just a little bit less experience than me, but she's still expected to do the same exact work as me. She is the only non-white member of the team. She is a Black woman. She is phenomenal. She's been at the firm for 4 years, and I found out that she was making $60,000 less than me. She's in a high cost of living area. This is, I found that was ridiculous. And I said, absolutely not. Girl, you should make more. You should advocate. Here's what you're going to do. And I taught her, you know, I was fully transparent. Here's what I make. You live in Chicago, I live in LA. We have very similar cost of living areas. Here's what you should do. Here's the people you should talk to. I'm going to advocate for you in our meetings as well. Well, the firm didn't take too kindly to that. That got me some quote unquote coaching calls from leadership, where I was expressly told not to discuss compensation with my fellow employees, and that what I was doing was seen as disruptive, quote unquote, and that can, you know, impede my ability to be promoted. Oh, you were talking about not being promoted within. Here's one of the examples. I told them I wasn't going to apologize. I absolutely still believe that she and everyone else should be fairly paid. That got me a meeting with a board member who tried to say the same thing. You're not allowed to discuss compensation. I said that's entirely illegal. I know my rights. And after that, I've since then I've faced retaliation. I've been pulled from projects. Again, I am the lead CISO at my company. I've been pulled from meetings. I've been discluded from meetings. I'm facing passive aggressive tones from emails, as well as response from leadership. And just 2 weeks ago, they put me on a performance improvement plan. I have 30 days to fall in line, or else they'll terminate me for discussing compensation and fighting for pay equity. And I refuse to be silenced. This is really important. I've talked about it with a lot of folks, and I want them to understand this is completely illegal what they're doing, and it's well within your right. And pay transparency is actually better for everybody. When we have pay transparency, then we have more fair pay. People feel better about that, you know, because women, we don't negotiate as much. Minority groups also, we don't negotiate as hard. We just feel privileged to get to the interview, and we, you know, we don't think as aggressively when it comes to negotiating. So, you know, I want to be able to use my platform for good and bring awareness to these issues and help other people say, no, know your rights, and know your worth, know your value, and absolutely advocate for yourself, and be that good ally and advocate. Again, see where I did an advocate there. Fight for other people. Use your platform, use your experience, and use your management for good, and try to help out the next generation. Now, all of those women got pay raises. I'm very proud of that. I can never regret what I did. And all of them now know how to advocate for themselves. And I've actually seen how they are now teaching others how to advocate for themselves. So absolutely no regrets. I'm proud of what I did, and I'll do it again.
Absolutely. I you know what, I would love to sit here and be kind of like on the fence about it and be like, oh, touching both sides and trying to understand. But at the end of the day, if you are so afraid, if there's a $60,000 discrepancy between two people who are doing the exact same job, and the only reason you don't want them to have a conversation about it is not so that there's upheaval or so anything, is that so people don't understand that they're being underrepresented and underpaid. There is a major legal reason there, and I think that that's starting to really come out with a lot of the big don't listen, I don't know on the legal side, but starting with a lot of the larger companies to come out, and why startups, like Rebecca said, are becoming the new place where people who are innovative, outspoken, diverse, different, that's where people are flourishing. And those are the companies that are doing well, making multi-billion dollars with such a small group, because they're doing it in a way that is diverse and innovative. And companies like this, unfortunately, or fortunately enough, are going to fall behind. But the fact that you need to be a martyr in between just shows where we actually are in terms of diversity right now. And we may have had quite a good factor on it, and there may be some progression, but it's definitely not in the way. And for someone to come into our conversation and say, why do you need to have a conversation? Why is this webinar relevant in cybersecurity? Well, you know, we've got 4 people on here who say this is my life story. So I think that's a major part to come back into it. So first of all, thank you, Malia. You're amazing. And I know that you are run off your feet at the moment and you're still doing this. So we really appreciate you, and women like you will be highlighted and hopefully put into the correct kind of positions moving forward. I think that kind of brings us also over to the next question, which would be really kind of good. I think we'll launch the poll though. Have we launched a poll already? Yeah, there it is. Okay, so let's do a little poll, which is exactly what we've just spoken about. And I'd love to hear everyone else who wants to interact, because people are interacting on the side. Someone says here, Malia, very well said, keep fighting the good fight. So definitely people on the side and understanding where you're coming from, obviously from that. So research shows that 37% of professionals get into cybersecurity have experienced hires with related prior experience. What can you do to support entry-level people getting into cybersecurity? So if you don't have the paid internship, the certifications, working at your uncle's cybersecurity firm, whatever it may be, how are we helping people to actually get into those entry-level jobs? And this will be quite good for me to kind of, I'm going to loop back over to you, Odie, because I know this is literally what you do. So would love to get the links in there after, but I'd also love to hear a little bit, just a little bit more about your kind of mentoring, Rebecca, and how you kind of helping people into that as well. If you'd like to share on that end, because you're at a cool company too.
Yeah. So on the mentoring side, there's a lot of things. I know within my career, mentoring definitely helped me. Just even finding my voice back in the contracting world. I really kind of was the quieter person, didn't really stand up for myself, didn't advocate for myself or others. And probably the second startup that I worked at had a female VP that was extremely outspoken. To this day, I still keep in contact with, and really mentored me a lot into the kind of the person who I am today, to where I still bounce ideas off of them and things like that. So it's really important to me to be able to give back. And I know, Rose, you do a lot of this as well. Everybody on this call does it, does a lot of this, where mentoring is just really important. So I know a couple of us mentor through Women in Cybersecurity. I've also helped teach classes previously through the Women's Society of Cyberjitsu, and just also working with mentorships through some other college programs, going back to one of my alma maters of Norwich University and others. So it's really something that not only are you helping somebody with, leading them to the right resources, whether it's training opportunities, exercises, or networking, but also having that visibility for other people to look up to and help from there. So.
Perfect. And mentorship is such a huge part. And I think relating back to like, how do we help people at entry level? Sometimes it's about going to that really difficult starting part of being someone who's entry level, and just having someone being like, I know where you are right now. You are being discriminated against. Cybersecurity is very difficult to get into, but I'm kind of here to help you through the journey. It just makes you know that you're not the only person who's struggling to get into it. And I think as as Rebecca said, mentoring is a huge factor. So I don't just want to stop on like her mentoring experience. I'd also really love to go over to Rose, hear a little bit about yours, because I know that mentoring is huge for you and you do it like one-on-one in a really kind of personable way, which I think has more of an effect than the mass mentoring that sometimes goes on over LinkedIn.
Yeah, I love mentoring. I love meeting all the different people, different backgrounds and everything. So like Rebecca said, I do mentoring with women in cybersecurity. I have a cohort of like 6 women, and we do like certain topics each month. That's kind of geared by the curriculum put on by women in cybersecurity, but it actually expands more into that. They come with their issues, their struggles, their problems. And if someone's facing an issue at work, we talk about it, like what support can you get? And in turn, those other women are learning how to mentor themselves and each other in this group. And it's so powerful. So when we meet, if they're facing challenges outside of like how to influence others, sorry, my cat wants to be on the webinar too. So if they're needing like how to advocate for yourself, influence, like they get those skills, but also like what GRC knowledge do you need? Because that's really hard skills to obtain just through like entry level. And so one time we sat through and I showed them exactly how I would make a policy from start to finish. And like we talked, where did you get those controls? And they got like more like one-on-one care. And then on the other side of it, I mentor other people who get directed from me, from other people. So like old bosses that know that I really love to mentor and talk to other women, they'll send women my way. I've had Harry from Broadgate send me like, hey, can you look at this resume? Like I like send the people my way and I will talk to everybody because I want everybody to have that opportunity to have someone advocate for them, have someone to like help with skills, whatever they need, or just have someone to listen to them, because sometimes that's all you need is someone to listen to you. So I'm just loving doing all of that. And then now we're developing a diversity and tech forum for my organization, and doing like fireside chats and all sorts of things like that. And I'm doing it with 2 other women in engineering. And so opening all of the doors wherever we can to start this dialogue and encourage these things to change.
Absolutely. And Con, thank you enough for the mentoring that you do. I can completely vouch that every single time we have, especially a young female coming into GRC who's passionate about GRC, Harry goes, don't worry, I just quickly need to pop an email over to Rose and then we'll see what we can do. And that's literally the kind of phone calls that I hear all the time. So really, really amazing on the mentorship. Before we move on to Odie and Malia, because I think, as I said, mentorship is important for this whole entire panel. So I don't think it's something we can kind of cut off from everyone. I'd love to share the results of the poll and then hear your thoughts on the poll itself. So just to reiterate what the question was, research shows that 37% of professionals got into cybersecurity as an experienced hire with related prior experience. What can you do to support entry-level people into getting into cybersecurity? So the first one was access to certifications, 27%. That's easier said than done, but we'll move over to that, Odie, in a second. The second one is ensuring more entry-level opportunities exist for young professionals. Again, easier said than done, but not unheard of, and also something that we can kind of touch on moving forward. The third one is including cybersecurity in the curriculum. 0% of people thought this was an important factor, which kind of shows that it may be not be education, it may be the actual access. And then lastly, creating community groups in for cybersecurity professionals, 13%. It's obviously a really huge factor that people are looking for, and hopefully something that we can send out to everyone, all of the groups that you said prior, everyone, because I think that'd be really, really good for people to actually access places that could help. But Odie, moving on to this is exactly what you do at the Cyber Council. So please tell us a little bit more about how you get people those certifications, paid internships, and why there's a need for it.
Absolutely. And I like to start with debunking the myth that there are not enough qualified minority or diverse professionals out there. That's not accurate. In fact, I'm engaged in multiple communities of veterans and racial minorities where they're unemployed or underemployed. So it's about securing access to opportunity for these, professionals to have, the type of employment that aligns with their core experience. In regards to, I would say, training. So I think the best solution from a business perspective is registered apprenticeships. Registered apprenticeships provides a direct pipeline to entry-level talent, and they also gain additional business incentives for participating in registered apprenticeships, like tax incentives, and they also gain cost-effective resources. So instead of paying 3 times market rate for a cybersecurity professional, which may have, X amount of years of experience, if you invest in registered apprenticeships, you'll be getting a more green professional, more entry-level professional, but they come equipped with the training and certifications so you can groom them and tailor them to the needs of your organization. So there's a lot of value to be gained for employers to participate in registered apprenticeships. We have a cybersecurity registered apprenticeship with the Department of Labor. We also have other training programs. We have a cyber high school program. We have a CompTIA 30-day IT fundamentals challenge launching in June, where we pretty much mentor and train people from disadvantaged communities to learn IT fundamentals. Those that graduate also gain a Google IT certification scholarship, so they'll be able to further enhance their skill-based training. And the point I want to make here is that even though those training programs prepare our students to be viable entry-level professionals, we can't always commit to them gaining employment. And what we really need are for employers to come on and say, we understand what you're building. We value this pipeline and we want to support that. We see how this can add value to our business. So with that being said, I think there's a lot of training programs out there, a lot of great training programs out there, free training programs out there that help students get certified and help groom their skills. But the biggest piece of the puzzle that is missing is the commitment from employers to say, we will invest in this and provide an opportunity once students graduate.
The actual corporate sponsorships are such an important aspect. You can train anyone until literally the certifications come out their ears, but if they don't have the ability to do, actually have the opportunity to come and do the experience, you're completely right. And lastly, also Malia, because this is such a huge part of what you do. And also, by the way, if anyone wants to gain any access to Cyber DI, also all the certification, anything that Odie does, like the most amazing things that he does and things that people aren't aware of that would be available for you that really help you. Because we've even got somebody in the comments here that say, what about opportunities for older workers? This is not just about entry-level people, this is about people who, well, entry-level, but this is not about age. Entry-level is such a spectrum. And I think a really important factor would be Malia's story. And I think you've got a little bit of a story as well, re-entering into it. So definitely check out Odie's page. We'll have everything linked below because it's such an important factor. But yeah, let's hear you, Malia.
Yeah, so I'll go fast. I know we only have a couple minutes. Esther, I wanted to especially cover yours. I've actually mentored now a dozen grandmothers who have entered cybersecurity. They are all working as in various roles in cybersecurity. One is actually an incident responder. Another one is managing vulnerability management for a casino. So yes, you can enter cybersecurity at any age. I also do mentoring for Gen Cyber Girls, Cyber Tech Girls, that's working with girls from middle school and high schools from the inner city, teaching them cybersecurity and computer science skills. And just last year, I guess I'm getting old enough that one of the first seventh graders that I worked with, she actually just entered college and is majoring in computer science. And she is now coming back and working with the Cyber Tech Girls and Gen Cyber Girls and mentoring them. So she's coming back, training up the next folks. The grandmothers that I've worked with, they are now teaching the younger folks, and they are then doing that circular mentorship. And that's something I'm a huge, fiercely proponent of, is that circular mentorship. We can all learn from one another, no matter where you're at in your career, no matter what age you are, no matter what your background is. Everybody has something to learn from one another. I've learned from everybody on this panel. One of the things that I ran into when I took a quote unquote break in my career a few years ago in order to care for my mom. She was actually diagnosed with terminal brain cancer. Working a full-time role in tech is not great for caretakers. And so I ended up quitting my job and I worked part-time at REI. I love the outdoors, decided to go back to school, formally get an education to supplement my knowledge that I gained in the military. And mom unfortunately passed a year later. And as I was trying to re-enter the workforce, all of a sudden I was treated as an entry-level worker. I had 6 years of experience at that point, including my time in the military. I had led people for, about 6 or 7 years. And I had to get an entry-level job because that was the only way that I could break back into the industry. And I was so frustrated. So I did cybersecurity consulting for $15 an hour as a way to break back in. And I had, I think I'd left a $90,000 a year salary or something to care for my mom. And I was so frustrated and I was so angry and I was so disappointed. Again, I was the only woman hired, that I made it my mission that that will never happen to another person, that they will not be treated as less than their worth, that they will not be treated below their value. They're going to know their worth. They're going to be paid fairly. And we're going to take into consideration other training. So I'm a huge proponent and a huge advocate of returnship programs. I love that Odie mentioned apprenticeship programs. I love them. I have built community college recruiting programs from different companies. I'm building it at my current company because there are so many different avenues in which we can have these workers enter the workforce. And in community college, there were some phenomenal people that I went to school with that have all sorts of experience of all walks of life. And guess what? Those are all extremely valuable when defending against threat actors. So all of these different things combined. I also work with, like Rebecca mentioned, Women's Society Cyber Jitsu, another phenomenal organization. I used to be one of the leaders in WESIS, Women in Cybersecurity. I've worked with Blacks in Cyber. I've worked with Latina Geeks, Latinas in Tech, Taqueria. There's so many different avenues. Lesbians in Tech is another phenomenal group. Find your group. That's what I'm going to leave y'all with at the end. Find your group, find what resonates with you, and then grow beyond that and find your safe place. Find your mentors there. And then once you feel comfortable, once you feel safe, then start to go beyond and see how can you also, cross-train into other areas of diversity, other areas where, you can learn and have that circular mentorship from folks and, continue learning. Cybersecurity is it's a continuous learning process. And so is diversity, equity, inclusion. It's a continual learning process.
And it's ever changing, especially for someone who's coming back into their industry. And obviously there's a lot of difficulties, but what I would definitely say is keep getting certified as much as you can in terms of online courses, ones that obviously don't break the budget $3,000 every single time, but there's definitely aspects out there where you can keep hot on the pulse and show companies that you're doing that. From an outsider's perspective, those little things really do make a difference. And we've definitely run over, which I was expecting with us anyway, but there is one final poll which I would love everyone to do before they go. We'll be entering into the networking part of this, which will be about half an hour. So definitely meet with us if you have any questions for the panelists. We'll be discussing anyway, giving all the points there. But if you can just let us know, has this event inspired you? Did you learn something from this event? Was it something that you felt a little bit more a part of? And has the event helped you feel a little bit more confident? Just before everyone goes, I'd absolutely love to thank everyone who's coming. Thanks so much. I always feel slight imposter syndrome sitting on this webinar with you guys, even speaking prior. I know like every single person who, is on this webinar, I've had a personal connection with and really think it was amazing. And you have a part of diversity that's so important specifically for me. And that's why I brought you on here. To conclude, this whole entire day, this whole webinar, I think individually we are all affected by diversity in different ways and through varied levels, but the effects that discrimination have on us, whether that be not being able to bring your authentic self to work, career barriers into leadership, or more serious mental health effects from work-related incidences, we are really all bound together because we are committed to the pursuit of ensuring diversity and inclusion and building a people-friendly planet and promoting equality. This is more meaningful approach to understanding risk in cyber environments is really important, because to defend, hunt, or understand the risk of a cyber environment, you're one step ahead if you understand the diverse world that is around you first. And I think that's the main important factor. So we'll all head on to the networking event. Is there anyone, before we leave, is there any kind of final anything that anyone wants to say to finally an impact, a call to action that they would want everyone to do after this?
I would just say, again, lead with your humanity when making hiring decisions and promotion decisions. Also, if you have the effect to promote positive change, try linking bonuses to diversity, because if you treat diversity and inclusion like a business priority, they should have some type of linkage to executives' bonuses and things of that nature. I think that will be able to stimulate the type of growth that we like to see in business.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And any other questions, please do join the networking event. These are the literally the most approachable mentors, and they will give you the best ways to go. So I'll let everyone go off now, and we'll go over to that. The link is on the chat to the right. So if you want to get involved, please click on that link. This will all be closed down, so that will be to the right in the chat. Thank you so much, everyone. I really appreciate your time. And thank you, everyone, for coming. Everyone's been fabulous in the chat section. Really, really appreciate it. Have a lovely day. We'll see you guys there.